Welcome to the podcast. It's the magical holidays. Time for Joe watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. Why, you might ask? Because it sounds like a crazy task to be watching 60 Christmas movies in 60 days. It'll be struggle, no I won't lie. By the halfway point I will lose my mind, but with your support I'm gonna be fine. So let's have a blast on this Christmas time. Join me now and let's find out about today's Christmas movie. Was it good or bad? Happy or sad? Is there another dead mom and dad? Let's get to it with no delay. It's your old pal Joe and he's happy to say welcome to Joe watches 60 Christmas movies in 60 days.
How's it going, everybody? It's me, it's your old pal Joe, and welcome to episode 53 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. Before we dive into today's movie, let us talk about our good friends over at Third Eye Comics. Third Eye Comics, the sponsor of Season 4 of Joe Watches 60 Christmas Movies in 60 Days. And because of them, this season existed altogether. So we have to thank him, and you know how we can thank them? By showing our financial support by going to one of the stores in the D.C., Maryland, or Virginia area, or by going to shop.thirdeyecomics.com. Go to shop.thirdeyecomics.com and buy yourself a little gift, because you know what? You know what I hear on the street? You know what word on the street is? Word on the street is you deserve it. Again, that's shop.thirdeyecomics.com. Today's movie is a Vineyard Christmas. We open on a snowy small town as Oh Christmas Tree plays. It pauses and then changes to shots of a vineyard. We are actually watching an opening to a TV show hosted by our main character, Heather. It's called Read Between the Vines. She introduces a particular vineyard that offers an ultimate Christmas picnic. We'll find out actually what we're watching is two shows. There was the one that was playing Oh Christmas Tree, and then there's the one starring the main character, Heather. One is on a network called Bev TV, and the other is on Tannin TV. I guess Tannin TV is a network dedicated to wine because the wine has tannins in it. I know that much. Anyway, the whole point is that we're being shown two competing Christmas specials, the one that seems more Christmassy and the one that Heather has created for Tannin TV. A network executive asked Heather to describe the difference between these two shows. Heather seems unsure what to say. She notes that the one for Bev TV featured a couple, and the other one just had her. The executive says that's not the point. She says it's the complete lack of winter in the show. Heather pushes back and says that she was told her Christmas special shouldn't have anything to do with Christmas. Apparently that was old news, though. That's changed. She needs a show that captures the pairing of a family Christmas and wine. Heather says, yeah, but I was planning to go home for Christmas, but with this extra work, I won't be able to. The woman promises that if Heather can pull this off, if she can get a new show done in time for Christmas, she'll approve another series Heather wanted to do where she tours Europe. Heather is in. And she knows just the place to go, Washington State. It features the O'Reilly Family Vineyard, and they host the annual Christmas Food and Wine Festival. The executive says, that sounds great, that's where you should go. What the executive didn't know is that she's also going to visit her hometown while she's doing this job, because it's in her hometown. She tells her work buddy that she's coming with her too. That her name is Shannon, and Shannon's like her camera person. Cut to Heather and Shannon freezing outside of Heather's family home. Heather is not happy. Shannon. Shannon is not happy. We learn that Shannon is Jewish, and I'm sure this will be played for laughs later on. I was wrong. It is never played for laughs. She just so happens to be Jewish. Heather sees her dad and gives him a big old hug and mentions that she can't wait to get to the O'Reilly Family Vineyard to do their work. Her dad mentions, well, there's going to be a problem with that. That doesn't exist anymore. They sold the land and moved to Florida. Heather freaks out. But then her dad mentions, actually, there's a new winery that's opened. Probably, I would assume, me, Joe, you, the listener, I would assume between us that they must have just taken over the land and it's the same land, but who knows. Anyway, there's a new vineyard. He's sure that Heather and Shannon could interview them. Heather heads off to see this new winery. Cut to the Knobloch Winery, where our other main character, Rudy, serves wine. He's our eventual love interest. He goes down into the cellar to find out how some wine is coming along. His brother Anton says it's not turning out so hot. Rudy wonders if they made a bad investment. Anton says, no, we just need to give the wine time. Rudy says we might not have that time. If we can't figure out how to draw in customers, we might not make it a year. Got to Heather arriving and meeting Rudy. She's surprised to see that he's the owner, I guess, because he's got a bit of a rough edge. I have no idea, but she basically is like, oh, you're the owner? Anyway, she explains why she's there, but they start bickering, and then Anton comes out to make peace. This is a thing where these two people are like oil and water. They don't get along, but then eventually they're going to fall in love. Anyway, let's see here. They take her on a tour of the vineyard. We find out their family has been in the winemaking business for over 100 years, but this is not their normal vineyard. They have other vineyards. They have a tasting to show off their product. First up is an ice wine. Heather loves it. It's their Christmas specialty. Now, I know that ice wine is a real thing, and it's something to do with harvesting grapes when it's close to freezing. And that's a big part of this movie. So, if you want to know more about ice wine, look it up. That's all I can do for you, folks. This movie does not explain it in great detail, or maybe I just didn't take those notes. It's up to you. Speaking of Christmas, Heather asks if they're planning on hosting the town's annual Christmas food and wine festival like the O'Reilly Vineyard did. Rudy says they're not. Heather says, but you need to. It's a cornerstone of my piece. Anton gets an idea. Maybe they can help each other out. He proposes that they focus the feature on how they make the special ice wine. She says, that sounds great, I'm in. Heather then leaves and the brothers start to bicker. Rudy is not in. He doesn't want them showing off how they make the wine. She's just going to use them to her benefit. Anton said yes, but this could also solve her other problems. And he also implies that Rudy's about to miss out on something else because he's scared, and I'm guessing he's referring to a prior relationship of his. Back over to Heather, who updates her work buddy Shannon on things, but then Heather gets a text. The vineyard is in. She rushes over with the contracts for the show and finds Rudy outside. She tells him that she's excited to work on the show with him, but he insists that they're still not interested. But what about the text I received? And he goes, well, that must be from Anton. And he grows really frustrated. Heather tries to convince Rudy that it's a good idea. It's just a few days of filming in the vineyards. They feature get a spike in visitors. It's a win-win. What do you say? He says, I want to see the contract. He reads through it, and it all looks good, but he wants one thing, final approval of what airs. She agrees, he agrees, they have a deal. It's a new day, and we find Shannon filming Heather talking to Rudy. She asks him to talk about the ice wine process. Rudy loses his train of thought. They try again. Rudy has trouble speaking on camera. It's not looking good. Rudy says he's not good at this. They should use Anton instead. Heather points out that you're the owner. People want to hear from you. Shannon has a way to break the ice for Rudy, though. She says, why don't we do a team building exercise? Heather's dad mentions a snowman building contest nearby. Why don't we do that? Maybe Heather and Rudy should try that snowman building contest. Rudy is willing to give it a shot. This is stupid, by the way. So this guy is stilted and awkward on camera. And Shannon, the camera person, says, you know what? Heather's dad mentioned there was a snowman building contest. Why don't the two of you build a snowman during this contest? And that'll make Rudy less awkward on camera. Anyway, it's nighttime now, and Rudy and Heather show up to the contest. The contest begins. They immediately bicker about how to start. He wants to roll big balls up for the snowman's body, but she wants to come up with a theme first. They decide to do both at the same time. As they work, she asks him if he likes the town. He does. We find out Heather lives in L.A. She mentions she doesn't get to come back home very often due to her work, especially since her mom passed away. They talk nice to each other as they work. Then they're done, and they lost. They laugh at the snowman they lost to. Afterward, they talk because I think it was just very simple, and they went kind of avant-garde. And then they saw the one they lost to was just a very basic snowman. Anyway, afterward, they talk and they talk and they talk. Heather says that the next thing they should do is get a Christmas tree for the vineyard. Rudy is in. He has an idea for where they can get one. They make plans for the next day, but then the channel executive calls and tells Heather that she better not screw this up. That doesn't really matter, but I didn't know it wouldn't matter when I took my note. Later that night, Heather catches Shannon up on the team building, saying it went well. Shannon is happy to hear this. They eat donuts. The next morning, Heather's dad mentions he thinks that they should bring back an old family tradition, Friends Christmas. Shannon asks, what's Friends Christmas? It's a Christmas potluck where everyone who attends brings something relating to their heritage or family. Heather loves the idea. They haven't done it since, and then she recalls they haven't done it since her mom passed away. Shannon tells Heather that she should invite the Knobloch brothers. Heather reluctantly agrees. Cut to Shannon filming Heather interviewing Rudy again, this time in the giant wine cellar where all of the wines are kept. This time, Rudy does great. We learn about the making of ice wine, and as I write in my notes, just please Google it. There are lots of segments of them being filmed, and the big takeaway from all of this is Shannon notices how well Rudy and Heather are getting along. We're now in the fourth segment of Shannon filming them. The last one focuses on a cookie they pair the ice wine with. Rudy shows Heather how to mix the batter together or the dough together, and they accidentally touch hands. Heather makes a face. Eventually the cookies are done and Heather and Rudy try them. They're great. At the end of the day, Heather tells Rudy that he was so much more relaxed than he was before. He says the team building really helped. Heather then invites him and Anton to the potluck dinner. He's in. Cut to Heather and her dad making dishes for the potluck. It's now potluck time. Heather's dad is so happy with everything. Then Anton and Rudy show up, and Heather is immediately awkward around Rudy. When she's alone, she tells herself to get it together. There are only 5 people at this potluck. There's Heather, there's Shannon, there's Heather's dad, there's Anton, and there's Rudy. We cut to after dinner. Folks talk about different Christmas traditions of the world, like the Irish Women's Christmas. It takes place on January 6th, and women get the day off, whereas men do all of the work. Then Heather brings out a gift for Shannon, a menorah. Shannon walks everyone through the traditions of the menorah. We find out it's actually the last day of Hanukkah, so Shannon has everyone light a candle and then say the blessings associated with it. Heather's dad says this is what Friends Christmas is all about. Afterward, Rudy and Anton say they had a great time. They'd like to host Heather and her dad for New Year's if they like. That is, if Heather is still around. Heather and Rudy share a moment, but then he heads out with Anton. That night, we see Heather get her text message from Rudy asking if she's ever tried frozen grapes straight off the vine. She giggles and says no. He says that might have to be our activity tomorrow. When she wakes up the next morning, she realizes she missed calls from the network executive. She calls her back and finds out that the network executive likes the footage well enough, but it's not Christmassy enough. It needs more Christmas, or else. Heather says she'll take care of it. Cut to her arriving at the vineyard. She immediately starts chatting with Rudy. She's ready to try those frozen grapes. She loves them. She also asks about the Food and Wine Festival. Rudy says they can't do it. They simply don't have enough money. Heather mentions it would be a big help for the production of the show since she knows, without telling them, she knows that she needs to add more Christmas. And she says maybe we could just get volunteers and I could use some of my per diem, the money that she's getting for the trip from her company. She could use some of that to help cover the costs. He's not comfortable asking people to donate their time or money, though. She says, yes, but it's important to the town. And he says, is it important to the town or is it important to you? Heather gets upset and admits that she wants to do it because it reminds her of her mom. He is immediately in once he hears this. They'll figure out the details together. Cut to Heather and Rudy hashing things out. They start with food. Rudy says he wishes he could just try everyone's food like they did at Friends Christmas. Heather says that's a great idea. They'll turn it into a giant potluck. It'll be a giant Friends Christmas. Rudy loves the idea. Next, we get a montage of Rudy and Heather passing out flyers. Cut to Rudy and Heather finally getting that Christmas tree for the vineyard. I don't know why it took half the movie for them to get a Christmas tree, but here we are. As they take a break, she asks why they needed to cut one down. He tells a tale from his childhood. He mentions really wanting to go to a particular tree farm to get a Christmas tree, but his dad wanted to cut the tree down himself. Rudy was mad, but then his dad took both Rudy and Anton out, and they had an amazing time cutting down the tree. After he tells the story, Heather says he's so good at telling his stories. They end up flirting a lot, and then we cut to Heather reviewing footage of her and Rudy hanging out. She is very into Rudy. Cut to people setting up for the big festival at the vineyard. Heather notices something may be going on between Shannon and Anton. Rudy says that Shannon is decidedly not Anton's type. I can't tell if he means that Anton is gay, but it's weird that he wouldn't come out and say whatever it is. And by the end of this movie, nothing is determined about what this meant. Anton then walks over and says that they have a problem. The weather forecasts that the big freeze they've been waiting on is happening tomorrow night. That means they need to harvest all of the grapes tomorrow, and they can't do that and throw the festival. Heather gets an idea. What if we made the ice wine harvest a part of the festival? That way the volunteers can participate in gathering up the grapes. And Anton says that'll be great. And then for anybody who does volunteer, we can give them a free bottle of ice wine for the following Christmas. Everyone thinks this is a great idea. Later on, Rudy asks if Heather would like to stay at the vineyard for dinner. She sure would. Cut to after dinner. She loves the food that Rudy has made. They chat and chat. She asks why he isn't with someone. He was engaged, but then she left when she was offered a big-time sommelier position in Paris. He wanted to follow her, but he was stuck watching the big family vineyard in America. Eventually, they broke up. He asks about her relationship history. She mentions her career has always taken a front seat, plus no one really matched her passion for her job. They joke and banter, and they have a great time. At the end, he says that he'd like to take her out on a proper date, and Heather says she'd like that too. We get another montage of decorating and food stalls being set up. We jump ahead to the end of the festival. Shannon comes over and asks Rudy and Heather to say how the festival went on camera. They do a whole segment explaining how things went. At the end, Rudy turns to Heather and says they make a good pairing. Now we watch people I guess like a wine pairing. I guess that's what he means. It's a joke. Maybe he doesn't realize it, but the movie sure does. Anyway, we watch people harvesting the frozen grapes as folks sing Oh Holy Night. We jump to Rudy and Heather basking in the success of the day, but then Heather's boss calls. She loves the footage, especially the love story between Heather and Rudy. Heather isn't sure what to say about that. Her boss says things look so good that she wants to go ahead and wrap up the shoot now. She needs Heather back in the office ASAP to get started on the next project. Cut to Heather and Rudy watching Shannon and Anton be playful. Rudy says he guesses the festival was a success in more ways than one. Heather then breaks the big news to him about having to go back home now because her new show has gotten a green light. She's going to get to tour Europe for her. Remember the show she hosts is called Read Between the Vines? Well, she wanted to do a special European version of it, and now because of the success of this episode, that show has been greenlit, and so she's going to get to go to Europe. Rudy is very sad that she has to head back now, though. He asks if that's really what she wants. You said you wanted to be here, to be home more. Was that all a lie? She says, no, it's not a lie. This is just an opportunity of a lifetime. He says, yeah, I've been there before. Am I supposed to put my heart out there just so you can break it? She gets mad. After all we've done together, why would you say that? He says, you know what, it's probably for the best that we don't see each other anymore. And he wishes her good luck on her European tour. Cut to her crying at home. Cut to Rudy angrily cleaning up after the festival back at the vineyard. Anton asks what's wrong. Rudy explains. Anton tells him, you should go fight for Heather. think you need to accept that this isn't your life. This is the life that was given to you, but this isn't the life you choose. You wanted to follow your last partner to France, so I think you need to think about what you want to do with Heather. Is running this winery what you really want? This all makes Rudy think. It's now Christmas morning. Heather is sad that she hasn't heard from Rudy. She really thought he'd reach out. Shannon makes her feel better, and they eat Christmas pancakes that were made by Heather's dad. Cut to Rudy trying to figure out what to text Heather. He keeps deleting whatever he types. Later, Anton shows him footage from the show. It proves to Rudy that he needs to be elsewhere. He needs to find a new life. Cut to Heather and Shannon being dropped off by her dad at the airport. Heather and her dad say their goodbyes, and we cut immediately to L.A. So apparently Rudy did not do anything, and she went all the way back home. In the office that Heather and Shannon work, Shannon stops by to ask Heather if she watched the show yet, because it aired, I think it was on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. Heather says she hasn't. She says, well, then you need to see this, and she makes Heather watch a clip of her and Rudy together and says, you know what, there's still time for us to make a detour before we head to Europe. Heather is convinced she needs to head back home to Miracle. When she arrives, no, Miracle was the last movie. I don't remember what the name of this town is. Whatever. Anyway, when Heather arrives, she finds Rudy helping her dad take down Christmas decorations. Rudy immediately goes into his big apology for what he said. He says he hasn't taken the time to figure out what he wants, whereas Heather knows exactly what she wants. And he's so happy for her. It was worth getting to know her, falling for her, even if this is goodbye. And then Heather asks him to come with her. Maybe not for the whole time, but at least visit her in Europe. She wants him to give himself some time to find out what he wants. He's in. And they kiss. And then we cut to Heather in Europe she's looking down the camera and making an introduction to her new show, Read Between the Vineyards, or Read Between the Vines, Europe. And as she introduces the show, who should walk into the shot but Rudy himself? He's the co-host of this show. They banter a bit and then they kiss on camera. They're a couple in the world of the TV show. How about that? Anyway, that's the end of the movie. And I don't really have much else to say. This movie was fine. Everything is fine now, which I guess is better than bad. Everything's fine. I'm tired, guys. I'm tired. 53 movies in the can. I've watched up through, just to give you a little idea, I've watched up through 56, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I promise you that. So that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chilling with me on a very cold day where I live. And until next time, take care and enjoy some Jingle Bells.